Good nautical day to ya. I be Pirate Captain Gibnut McGillicuddy, and I will be your pilot on today's Bullship ocean tour, where our motto is, you get what you pay for. Sponsored by Paul's Pigeon Milk. You can taste the vitamin R, you can. That's good stuff. On this tour I will talk to you about many aspects of our great oceans, so strap in and get ready for an interesting time, me hearties. Har 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 har. And if you do not have fun, you don't get a refund. It's your fault for being bored, you know. Yar har har har. But before we can start, here are a few safety announcements. Please mind the seagulls. Ever since the treaty, they own half of the boat, they do. Keep your limbs inside of the boat. Anything's left behind becomes mine. No exceptions to that policy. Don't drink or eat any of the food on this boat. It might kill ya. Our first mate Jasper has a few more rules for ya.
Talking on a turn, that's a paddling. Looking out the window, that's a paddling. Staring at my handles, that's a paddling. Paddling the school canoe, oh, you better believe that's a paddling.
Any questions? No? Well then off we go. Yar! The first stop of our Bullship's voyage be the zones of the ocean. Yar, har, 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 har. Yar, there being an aridic zone, which is the area of ocean over the continental shelf. Yar, the continental shelf be the part of the continent that is submerged under the ocean. The oceanic zone is the part of the ocean that's continuous ocean until you reach the bottom. The epipelagic zone, it's the most northern zone of the ocean. Hence why it is known as the sunlight zone. After that, it be the mesopelagic zone. Yar, it be the twilight zone. There's a tiny amount of light down there, me hearty. Yar, under that be the bedipelagic zone. It's the midpoint. Under that is the abyssopelagic zone. There's no sunlight down there. Hence why it is called the midnight zone. The deepest zone of the ocean is the heteropelagic zone. Yar har har har. Stop number 2 on our voyage is animal classification. And the animal we're going to be classifying today, me hearties, is the banded sea crate it be. Yar har 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 har. The banded sea crate is a highly venomous snake of the Elepat family that lives mostly in the ocean. It preys on fish and eels. The snake be semi-aquatic, so it naturally lives near land, so it can go out on land and have coitus with all the other sea snakes up there. And then, after a while, lay its eggs in the sand. In the ocean, the snake typically lives in coral reefs and rocky areas of various forms. The scallywag snake lives in the warm waters of the eastern Indian Ocean and western Pacific Ocean. The snake lives in the epipelagic, Gibnut's personal favorite, the mesopelagic, and the land zones. Lastly, the snake is a nectin, since it can swim of its own volition, rather than being a plankton. The lazy butters require outside forces to make them move. The next electrifying stop in this power-tastic voyage is electricity and its relationship to the ocean. I am positive that you will enjoy this segment. Electricity itself is made from a wide variety of generators. The generator itself makes electricity by forcing the charges of electrons to move down a wire. There are 3 key things needed to make electricity: magnets, copper wire, and motion. Motion is required to make the copper wire and magnets move relative to each other, and that then moves the electron charges. One of the ways you can generate electricity from the ocean is using tidal barrages. Tidal barrages use the changes in tide to cause motion. Another form of ocean energy is wind energy. A wind turbine is able to generate motion from the wind, twirling, 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 twirling the turbines. There is also wave energy. A wave energy converter gets energy from the wave hitting it. Thermal is another form of ocean energy. An OTEC device is able to generate motion from the thermal energy of the ocean, boiling the liquid contents in it. Shiver me timbers, it be methane hydrate. Methane hydrate is a natural gas energy. The last example of ocean energy is oil. An oil derrick gets oil by drilling deep into the ocean. This oil is then harvested up from the ocean floor and then heated. And it being heated makes steam. That steam causes motion. And now, me fellow travelers, we get to a sad part of our voyage, for it being pollution. There are many sources of this evil in our ocean, including but not limited to urban runoff, industrial discharge, oil spills and spillage, various actions and substances that come off of ships, careless dumping of plastics and other wastes into the ocean, the infestation of sunscreen, toxins and other crap perverting our waterways. Lastly, there be farm runoff and nutrient pollution. Obviously, these many types of pollution would have numerous adverse effects on the ocean, including millions of fish and other marine life dying needlessly en masse, the creation of many giant islands of plastic. It can also prevent enough or cause too much oxygen for the life in the ocean, the bleaching of coral. Humans have drastically less ocean-based food, the steady acidification of the ocean, and lastly, the fact that oil can suffocate and smother creatures, which makes it harder for them to move, and it is toxic, so they will die. Even though us humans have done a lot of harm with pollution, we are still capable of doing some positive things for the ocean, like drinking from reusable water bottles instead of one-time use plastic ones, increased use of environmentally friendly sunscreens, increased use and production of electric and hybrid cars, increased proper disposal of waste, and lastly, the increased encouragement of companies to be more responsible with the dumping of its waste. But like anything involving humans, there will be many potential negative effects in the future, including we could just ignore the growing problem of pollution in the ocean. We continue to dump more and more plastics, waste, and sunscreen into the ocean willy-nilly.
We dump enough radioactive material into the ocean, making a new potential humanoid species or other mutant.
Or lastly, we might just have to wear respirators every time we go outside of a building. The Earth has a natural process called the greenhouse effect. Without it, no life could exist on our planet. Molecules of CO2, H2O, CH4, and N2O allow sunlight to pass through the air and heat our planet's surface. And it also absorbs and traps heat that comes from the ground and the ocean. The effect itself works like a large glass greenhouse surrounding our planet. But if the level of the greenhouse gases keep going up, even more heat gets trapped, so our planet gets unnaturally warmer. It does. That's no good, me hearties. That is why it was originally called global warming, but a lot more occurs when the climate changes, hence the new name. Now some of you might be asking, where did this climate change come from, and what were some of the causes for it? And luckily I have the answer for you. One of the main ways is a large amount of CO2 that has been emitted and is still being emitted into our atmosphere. Right now, in fact, our increased reliance on fossil fuels. Also the fact that we burn a lot of fossil fuels doesn't help that much either. Human carelessness is also a very major one. Now the effects climate change has on the ocean vary. One of the ones is the ocean has been acidifying slowly, going from the 8 that it should be down to a more acidic 7.8. Changing the natural currents and winds of the ocean. A lower pH means that animals will not be able to make the necessary amount of cells for them to live. And the warming temperatures has a few adverse effects on the ocean. Coral bleaching is a major one, and the fact that animals have to live in new places because of the fact that their old ones were too hot or too cold, and the animals that can't move, they die. Longer growing seasons and more rain. Some areas will become much hotter and much drier. Sea level rise. A larger amount and more severe storms and other weather events. The contamination of freshwater supplies. And it majorly butters up thermohaline circulation, it does. Now we're going into a deeper part of our voyage. Fasten your seatbelts. It gets a little rocky around this area. And that rocky area is marine geology. To start you out, I'm going to talk about plate tectonics. The tectonic plates are giant land masses in the lithosphere. There are 8 major plates, and there's many smaller ones. All the plates are part of the crust, and there be 2 different types of crust there be. There's continental and oceanic crust. Continental crust is thick with 3 C's, but not as dense. Oceanic crust is thinner, but it's denser. The plates all move very slowly. When the plates collide, they form one of 3 different boundaries. The 3 boundaries are convergent, divergent, and transform. A convergent boundary is where 2 or more plates come together. The denser of the plates sink, thus making mountains, small volcanoes, and trenches. A divergent boundary is when 2 plates pull apart from each other. This forms large volcanoes and mid-ocean ridges. A transform boundary is when 2 plates slide alongside of each other. This forms transform faults and slip faults. Yar har 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 har. Our last major section of this tour is food webs and what happens when you alter them. Now, what is a food web, some of you might be asking? It is a visual representation of how millions of species evolved to deal with one another over millions of years. And it shows the relationship all the creatures have with each other, like who eats who. There are many roles in a food web. Perhaps the most important out of all the roles is the producer. Producers are able to make their own food by converting energy, most likely from the sun. A major example of producers are plants and algae. Or the other major role in food webs be the consumers. Consumers do not make their own food, so they eat producers or other consumers. If you're a consumer that eats producers, then you're most likely a herbivore. Herbivores only eat plants. Some examples of herbivores are algae-eating fish, cows, and vegans. The consumers that eat other consumers are predators. Predators love to eat meat, yar har har. Examples of predators include sea snakes, barracudas, Woody Allen, and sharks. Humans have been screwing up with food chains practically ever since we existed. Human interference has resulted in the extinction of many species. This has huge consequences on food chains.
Boy, if it was a predator that went extinct, the population of the creatures under it could start breeding exponentially. Boy, just like me potatoes, you know.
And if a very important food source dies off en masse, then the predators that eat that die off in large numbers, since they would have lost a major food source they would have done. And if it's a producer that goes extinct, then all of the creatures in that ecosystem will eventually die, they will. There are many ways to pervert a food web, there are. One of the many ways is overfishing. Another disastrous thing you could do is introduce an invasive species.
And other various ways to exterminate or cause the extermination of a species.
Some of you might be asking, what is an invasive species? Well, an invasive species can be any kind of living organism that is not native to an ecosystem and causes harm to said ecosystem. The lionfish is an invasive species. It is native to the Pacific Ocean, but humans have introduced it to the Atlantic Ocean. And ever since it was introduced to the Atlantic, it's been wreaking havoc. It has been eating most of the other fish in that ocean, eliminating food for the native predators and thus wiping them out. Another example is the northern snakehead. The snakehead is native to Asia, but it was introduced in America. It is an apex predator. They destroy most foreign food chains that they enter, and they reproduce quite a lot. And lastly, there is the royfish. The royfish has no natural predators. It is native to the Indo-Pacific. It has a very large population. They are poisonous, and they are poisonous to anything that might eat it, and they are invading the state of Hawaii. Well, the tour's over now, so, I hope you all had a good time on it, and I hope you all return to have another Bullship voyage.